White House correspondent Allison Harris speaking directly with President Biden about the Democrats' voting rights bill, which was defeated in the Senate overnight. And Allison is at the White House this morning with a breakdown of that nearly 2-hour-long news conference, the longest in history. At least this is something that Republicans and Democrats can agree with. It was extremely long.
It was, Adrienne, and the president made very clear that his work is not done. In that very feisty, nearly 2-hour press conference, as you mentioned, it was very long. The president saying that he does believe that his achievements in his first year in office have been remarkable, but he's now hitting a reset, wanting to reconnect with Americans across the country in his second year as president.
I'm going to stay on this track.
On the anniversary of his inauguration.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
President Biden reviewing his hits and misses, resolving to connect with the American people on what he's still fighting for and what's at stake.
Some people may call what's happening now the new normal. I call it a job not yet finished.
So far in his job as president, he's led 210 million Americans to get vaccinated, helped 6 million people get jobs, and passed the largest investment in roads and bridges in the nation's history. But Omicron is the new enemy. Prices are the highest they've been in 40 years. And his domestic agenda on voting rights, childcare, and climate change is stalled, only surviving if it's significantly scaled back.
We have faced some of the biggest challenges that we've ever faced in this country. But we're getting through it. And not only are we getting through it, we're laying the foundation for a future.
Overnight, the Senate dealing the president another blow.
Senate will be in order.
Rejecting his voting rights bills.
If this isn't passed, do you still believe the upcoming election will be fairly conducted and its results will be legitimate?
Well, it all depends on whether or not we're able to make the case to the American people that some of this is being set up to try to alter the outcome of the election. I think if, in fact, no matter how hard they make it for minorities to vote, I think you're going to see them willing to stand in line and defy the attempt to keep them from being able to vote.
The president acknowledging the overwhelming frustration and fatigue people feel in year 3 of the pandemic, still saying we're heading in the right direction, even as school districts across the country grapple with staffing shortages and contemplate closures.
Parents are at odds over closing schools and remote learning. You say we're not going to go back to closing schools. You said that just moments ago, yet they're closing in some areas. What do you say to those teachers and principals and parents about school closings?
First of all, I put in perspective the question you asked. Very few schools are closing. Over 95% are still open. So you all phrase the questions when people, I don't think it's deliberate on your part. What are we going to do? 95% are still open. That's why we made sure that we had the ability to provide the funding through the Recovery Act, through the act that the first act we passed, to be able to make sure schools were able to be safe.
The president also expressing some frustration there that so many states across the country have not yet used the billions of dollars allocated in those COVID rescue packages to be able to help keep schools open. So what can we expect from the president in year 2? We can expect to see him on the road more often, taking more trips on Air Force One. He talked yesterday about how COVID has forced him to stay away from the American public, and he really feels like his strength lies with those one-on-one connections, as he says, allowing people to size him up for themselves, to see his sincerity firsthand. Across the board, his polling numbers are frankly not doing well. He has pretty high disapproval ratings. It's clear that this president understands he needs to change up the messaging and really reconnect with the American people.
I have so much I could get into with that one statement alone, Allison. We're going to save that for future hours of the show. Was the president saying, in answering that great question you asked him yesterday, that without the passing of voting rights legislation, that there's no way we can have a legal and fair election?
Important question, Adrienne. He was not saying that, but the American people did not hear him say outright the election will be fairly conducted and it will be legitimate. You heard him later clarify what he means is that without the chances of this being an illegitimate election in the midterms go up if voting rights legislation does not pass. Now, we didn't see it pass last night, but the president also hinted at some executive action that he could take in the future to strengthen the election, to strengthen voting rights. And there's also some talk on Capitol Hill, some really early conversations with a bipartisan group of Congress talking about election reform, changing the Election Reform Act, essentially making it more difficult for a vice president to be able to throw out secure election results. Think about Vice President Pence a year ago, a little over a year ago. He made sure to not throw out the election results, really safeguarding and securing our 2020 presidential election. So there's still talks that are ongoing about voting rights, even after what we saw fail on Capitol Hill late last night.
You know what, Allison, contentious talks and controversial talks about voting rights legislation. Allison, thank you so much and great job. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to click on the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.